So, good morning, Loralie. How are
Morning.
you today?
Wonderful. And
Good. And where are you joining us? It looks like you're in your classroom.
I am. So in the fall, I started a brand new position as an English language learner teacher, and I love Dr. Seuss. So I painted my room as "Oh, the places you'll go," because I figure my students come from all over the world, and I
Perfect.
want to have a bright, happy place to come to and visit every day.
Awesome. I'm sure you're glad to be back in your classroom too.
Very much so.
Yes. So I met you when I started doing the Read to Succeed program. Several of our Calvary people started doing Read to Succeed last fall. And so I had was matched up with your classroom back when you were still a teacher and had a classroom of students. And so I really enjoyed getting to meet you through that. And then COVID hit. And then we couldn't do Read to Succeed. And then we found out that we lived in the same neighborhood. So we live in Harrison Highlands together. Went for a walk, and then you started attending Calvary during COVID. So tell me a little bit about how you ended up at Calvary.
Well, so I met you through the Read to Succeed, and then I've actually known Corey and Jeff Brenner
Mm-hmm.
since before I ever had children. I mean, before they had children. So forever, Corey's actually the one that taught me to sew.
Oh,
So
I did
when
not know
oh, yep, we used to have a girls' craft night,
that.
and
Okay.
so Corey's the one that taught me how to sew. So when COVID first hit, I went back to my roots of Corey's and I started sewing masks for people out of the fabric I had at home
Mm-hmm.
and donating those to people. So, she's wonderful. Jeff I've known forever. And then actually it started also with Cooper Dot. He when he was a student of mine,
Okay.
he asked me, he said, I don't have family in town, and he invited me to his baptism at that church. And he said,
Wow, I didn't know that.
would you please come to my baptism? He's like, it would really mean a lot to me. So the very first time I attended that was during his baptism. And
Wow.
I liked the church back then, and it's always been in the back of my head. And
Yes.
so a lot of different ties to the church through different ways.
Great. And when you started coming, you were kind of doing a hybrid between online and coming in person because, of course, as a teacher, you were wanting to make sure that you were protecting your students and being careful and following safety procedures. So um, it's always interesting to us during times like COVID when we're like, are new people coming? How are we getting to know new people in our community? And so you're a good example of someone who jumped in during a really weird time, but you jumped in with both feet. I think you went to Discovering Calvary.
I did. So I started online, and then I went to the Discovering Calvary Rage because I was just curious to see what
Mm-hmm.
the thing was about and the beliefs of the church, and I enjoyed going to there too.
Mm-hmm. And so you and I worked a lot during COVID because several of the students that you work with were needing help with groceries or household supplies. And so you and I got to know each other even better working through the COVID help text that Calvary has and just different things we were trying to do to reach our community, and found that you and I both have a passion for just meeting the needs of people in our community who are struggling. And so out of that, you felt God leading you to do something a bit out of your comfort zone. So tell us what it was that you saw the need and decided that you wanted to do.
Well, I was actually at a student's home on a Saturday when you were having your first food drive, and you had
Mhm.
called me and said we had food boxes to give away, and then we needed it to be done in a half an hour. And I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to get this taken care of? But I sent out a message to my families, and there was a lot of families that replied, and so that showed me there's a huge need for my students. Um, and so after that day, I sent out another text to my families, and I said, is there anything else that you need instead of food? And they started telling me that they needed boots and coats, and it just weighed on me that something needs to get done here. I'm like, if these families need it, originally it was two families, but then um, you as a teacher, you see around school, kids need things. And typically what the teachers were doing is we would just go to the store and we'd buy it ourselves because we want our we want our students taken care of. They're ours,
Yeah.
and we protect them. And then we had the next food drive, and I was able to give away 75 boxes of food that day in that mobile home park. And that showed me even more what of a need there is.
Yeah.
And the first snow came, and a little boy asked about having boots and things.
Mhm.
And I was like, I thought over the years as a classroom teacher, the need was here, but I never knew how to fix that problem. And I saw that other schools have a clothing closet, and I saw that we have Lost and Found, and then we donate that to other schools.
Oh, okay.
So when the Lost and Found, instead of taking it to Goodwill, they would take it to some other clothing closet or homeless shelter, and which is wonderful. But I'm like, we have that need right here in our own school,
Right.
and I'm like, we need to take care of our students.
Yeah.
And so I went, and I remembered we have some portables outside that we aren't using anymore. So I went to my principal and I asked him, would it be possible to use one of those as a clothing closet?
Mhm.
So I was a little nervous at first because I'm obviously starting a brand new job that didn't have a lot of guidelines.
Yes.
And for my job, I am taking college courses at the same time.
Yes.
So I wasn't sure I was going to have the time to do it.
Yeah.
So that was
lots of reasons to say, well, that's a good idea, but maybe not.
And I've had this idea for years, and I just never acted on it. And I put it off, and I thought, is now the time? I'm like, I'm going to be overwhelmed. I had no idea what to expect with my courses, exactly what to expect with COVID, but I've just seen the need is so huge, and it just kept weighing on me. And I was listening to sermons about, sacrifice, don't do what's easy,
Mhm.
Because I felt like I was doing a good job when I was like sewing the masks and things, but that's when I had the time to do it.
I mean, you were already very involved in the lives of your students. So certainly
that was on my comfort zone. Like, I'm like, I had time, I was at home. And so, but this was more of a, how am I going to accomplish it? Because we're back to school in person. I'm taking college classes. I'm going to have to definitely fit time into my schedule for this. So it wasn't going to be as comfortable as I had in the fall or in the spring when we first hit. So I had the idea, and I asked my principal, and he said he'd let me use a portable. And then I came to you and wondered, if you'd ever run one, because I didn't know anything about a clothing closet, how to run it, what it takes. I was completely new to this whole procedure.
Right.
I did some research online, and then you suggested some grants for me. So I reached out to the community on some grants. They thought it was a great idea. They had just used all their funding. So I posted on Facebook what I was planning on doing, and I had a lot of friends say, we would love to help, but we just don't know how to help.
Right. And which I think is a common thing you hear. Even when COVID started, it's like people want to help. They just don't always know how to help and aren't connected maybe with the people who are needing the specific help they're able to give. And so I think as a teacher, you have a very unique position where you bridge some of those gaps. Yeah.
Well, I've taught in my building for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a long history with the various families in my building. I still keep in contact with them. So when I put that out there, a lot of people said, we'd love to help, but we don't know how. And someone had suggested making an Amazon wish list.
Yep.
And so I started that way, and people were buying off the wish list. I was like, oh, so that gave me a little, and then my daughter's godmother, she used to be a teacher here at Burnett Creek, and she ordered 3 racks for me. So, I felt like it was a little step at a time. I'm like, I can do this. And I knew that you could help a little bit.
Yeah. And then I know the week that Drew taught about the joy bag. So he preached about joy, and then you had sent me a text or called me because you had one very specific story that was kind of just a cool way that you saw God move in this story, but really affirmed to you that what you should be doing. So can you tell us about what happened with that story?
So, I took that seriously about the joy, and I did some things for myself that week. But when I was teaching, I had a little boy ask me if Santa brings everybody a present. And it was a 4th grader, so I was really nervous about where we were going in that conversation. But he ended up saying, he goes, because the only thing I asked Santa for was a pair of snow boots and some pants. He goes, I outgrew mine. And I sat and I thought, imagine as a child,
Right.
And so I wanted to bring joy to him too.
Yes.
So immediately I texted his mom and asked what size he was, you know, and then I started and then I sent a message out to the families again, and I got this huge list because it was the day after the first snow we had.
Yes.
Didn't get a huge response with my first text, but once the first snow hit, I had a huge list of things. I thought, I don't know how I'm going to be able to accomplish this.
Right. Because at that point, the clothing closet's not yet up and running. Students aren't even back in the building to use the clothing closet.
When I decided to start it and I got approved and I wrote my letter to put out, that was the day I got COVID.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. Really bad timing. So, you get that urge, so that would have been a time to give up. You're like, okay, this is not meant to be.
Right.
I got COVID. This is my sign. Do not.
If you're looking for an out, this would have been a good out, right?
That was my out, but it's still weighed on me, so right then, so that put a 2-week delay on what I was doing with everything. But so we texted about, you sent a message out to the church. Boots were hard to find. They were, it was really hard to find boots. So I went to stores and looked, and then I ended up going to Once Upon a Child that night. I couldn't even find a lot of boots in regular stores. And I thought, well, maybe they have some.
Right. And so for anyone who doesn't know what Once Upon a Child is, that is a really nice used children's clothing store.
Yes.
I used to go to all the time when my kids were little. You can sell clothes there, buy clothes there, but it's kind of like a Goodwill only.
Nice. And I actually know the family, the owners. Their daughter was my ex-husband was her teacher in 4th grade. And then she ended up being my cadet teacher in high school. So I've kept contact with the family. And she's now married and is pregnant. And, so just a nice relationship with the family forever. Yeah. And
but it's a place to go find some good used.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I'm like thinking, okay, how much can I dig? So I'm digging through all the older boots and digging, I'm like, how much, I don't want to spend too much. But with the clothing closet, they said one of the things that's important is you want to make sure it's nice quality because you don't want the children to think that they're of a lesser value. I always look at it as, would I want my own children wearing this?
Yes, I tell people that quite a bit when we're collecting used things or even when we're purchasing new things for the, Operation Christmas Child boxes or something like that. Like think of it as what you would get for your own kids or, yeah.
And so that was on, so I was looking through some of them. I was like, oh, I don't think this pair's good. That's what I was doing in my head is, would that be okay for my own child or not? Mm-hmm. And so because they had some really nice new boots on the one side, and then I just couldn't find him. And I stood up and I saw this man walking towards me and I couldn't figure out, he's kind of looking at me and he hands me an envelope. And I was telling him what I was doing in the store. He's like, make sure you open the envelope and read it. I was like, okay. And so I just told him why I was there on a school night, what I was doing. And he was very interested in it. And so he hands me a second envelope and I keep talking to him. And he asked, how do I get the money for my clothing closet? Mm-hmm. I said, well, like yesterday morning, I got up before school and I drove to Walmart and I used my $50 gift card there. And then after school, I drove to Sam's Club, And so the gentleman that was with him, he looked at him and he goes, it's your money. Or he said, it's yours. I don't know if he said your money. He goes, you do what you want with it. And he hands me 3 more envelopes. And I said, he goes, make sure you open these or you go and check out. And he goes, there's $100 bill in each of these envelopes. And I was floored. You hear about things like that happening on the internet, but it never happens to you in person. I've never known somebody that's actually happened to in real life.
Yes.
And I was so excited. I was just completely flabbergasted. So I was jumping up and down. I was like,
wait, you have 5 envelopes.
5 envelopes.
So $500.
$500. And
it's a long way at Once Upon a Time.
The first thing I said was, I can buy the good boots for my kids. Yeah. So I didn't have to stick to the used that couldn't barely have, and they didn't have enough. So I started piling up. I ended up with 4 carts that night of things. Yeah. But the neat part was when you open the letter, it says about being a good Samaritan. I had the verse about it. And it said, if you don't need this, give it to somebody else that does need it and then kind of pay it forward. Well, there was a lady I'd seen earlier in the store and she was like an aisle over to me and she'd been listening to my story, speaking with him. And she walked up and she handed me her envelope too. And she said, my family doesn't need this money. She goes, but your students do. And she's like, you're doing a great thing for them.
Wow.
So I ended up with $600 that night to buy pants and boots and coats and gloves and hats. They didn't have any gloves by the time I left the store that night, and they helped me. And then they actually ended up giving me a 20% discount on everything because of so I could buy even more things.
So you probably walked out with like $2,000 worth of stuff.
I mean, if it was brand new, yeah. I mean, so I was so I got to spend that Friday, because that was the last day that was Thursday night and school got out on Friday. So I was worried about the kids going home for break and not having it. So I was able on that Friday.
Before break. Yeah.
So I got to call the kids down and to my room that day, and I got them all packed up with coats and boots and hats and gloves. So they would have that over winter break. And then the ones I couldn't get to, or they couldn't fit them in their backpacks, then I went and delivered them to their houses for them.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Such it was a cool story. I know you were so excited.
I was. I just couldn't believe it was actually happening, because I had this dream and I was like, how am I going to get this done? And to work with the kids every day and just to know they're so, they were just so appreciative. They have the smiles on their faces to have a pair of boots or to have a pair of warm gloves and so actually some of the kids couldn't put their stuff in their backpacks. So after school, I drove to the neighborhood and some of them were already out playing in the snow with their things. So I got a picture of some of them already playing in the snow with their new coats and hats and things.
That's so awesome. Yeah. So, first of all, thank you. Thank you for just doing all of that. I think, a lot of times we really struggle with, like, we don't want to tell the story to make it look like we're something, right? So but at the same time, like, it's encouraging for other people to hear those stories and to know, like, okay, what is it that God would want me to do? What is this, and it doesn't have to be starting a clothing closet. It can be as simple as seeing someone in line at the grocery store and feeling, like, is God telling me to do something for that person in the grocery store, to give them, to pay for their groceries, to give them something, we never know.
This was just, it's been weighing on me at different, I was like, and this whole path of me getting this job and different things, it was definitely meant to be, so I've kind of gone with whatever I'm led to do right now, because when it started in the new year, this position I took, I got a call to start the college classes and they're going to pay for it. It was just you can see the plan right now. I can clearly see the plan in my life right now, how it's supposed to be. So I just took this on as, this is the next step in his plan for me. And this is what I need to do.
So if someone's listening to us today, we're talking about, doing radical acts of love, loving our neighbor, and all the different ways that we can do that. I do think sometimes ideas come to us and we think of all the reasons why we shouldn't do that.
Yes.
So what would you say, just in closing, to someone who maybe is where you were back when this idea very, very first started, whether this is a small idea, a big idea, what would you tell them to encourage them?
Well, first of all, I'd say talk to somebody about your idea. Just don't keep it in, because you're going to, in your head, you can tell yourself, oh no, but if you have a good support system, they're going to encourage you, and I did. I had a lot of people saying, that's a great idea. And then I felt like it was something I could accomplish. I sent out a message to my staff just saying this. And I said, if you're interested in helping me, and I had a huge response from my staff that said, let me help in any way. I actually have someone in my room right now at school. She's helping me with the clothing closet. Nice. So to have this idea, you don't have to start huge. It started out with the 2 people that needed coats. And I thought but the reason I knew it was I had a friend tell me, well, you can go to Sam's Club and they have donations, So if you talk to people about your ideas, they can help guide you on the path of how to accomplish it. Yeah. And just reach out to people. There's times, there was one Christmas for the kids where you go and take families. My daughters and I had done that. And there was a family that their child was struggling in school. And I gave them advice on that too. It's just, you get put in places for a reason. Yeah. And don't be afraid to, it doesn't have to be something huge like this, but to that parent, knowing what to do to help her child was huge. Yeah. So just think about, what's your goal? What path does God have for you, and how can he lead in helping others? Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. Sometimes people say, well, how do you know this? And I think that everybody It's
Yeah.
just normal and secondhand to me. But then I realized they said, well, no, you've been teaching for 20 years.
Mhm.
You accumulate all this information and you don't realize it until somebody tells you,
Yeah.
oh, that's a good thing. You need to share that with other people.
Yeah.
I'm sure other people are out there like that too.
For sure. And I do really appreciate you sharing your story with us. I'm also going to put like a link so that people can know how they can donate to the clothing closet, or what your needs might be, especially as we move into springtime and things are going to change there. But I'm very thankful that you are a part of Calvary. I'm thankful that you allowed God to lead you, and that you were able to just use the different needs that you saw and trust God that He would help to provide for those. And then the cool stories about the way that He has and will continue to do that. So I hope you have a great day.
I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye.